I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Tonight, as so many of us think about getting together with family and friends for the Thanksgiving holiday, you might also want to consider your health. Cases of whooping cough are going through the roof. It's dangerous for infants and the elderly. And public health directors say much of it is now spreading amongst people who are not vaccinated. And that is our big story tonight. Whooping cough is a respiratory infection that spreads super easy. It starts with symptoms that seem just like a cold: sneezing, runny nose, low-grade fever, mild cough, that sort of thing. Within 2 weeks, though, it causes fits of coughing so bad that it's hard to catch your breath. And then there's that whooping sound when you cough. In Washington state, as of November 2nd, 1,193 cases were reported, compared to just 51 during the same time period the year before. In Oregon, as of November 19th, 850 cases have been reported, compared to just 33 the year before. Many of these cases were among people or children who were not vaccinated. It's a big problem, and public health directors like Clark County's Alan Melnick are sounding the alarm.
As a physician in general, it's really frustrating to see people get sick, have their lives disrupted, potentially die. And we're talking about children here as well, from something that is very preventable. There's no reason why we should be seeing these outbreaks and illnesses from something that is preventable with something that is so safe and effective and inexpensive as a vaccine.
Now, yes, it is true that you can still get whooping cough even if you are vaccinated, but the health department says it's not nearly as severe if you do. Tonight, we're going to explore the growing issue of vaccine hesitancy, and for some parents when it comes to their kids' vaccine resistance. Why aren't people getting themselves or their kids vaccinated, and how can doctors overcome that? And before we dig into this, let's recognize that some kids don't get their shots because it's just too inconvenient for their parents or caregivers for a variety of reasons. Or maybe there are religious reasons. We're not talking about that here, though. This is a discussion about kids whose parents could get them vaccinated, but decide not to. The numbers seem to be growing. According to the Oregon Health Authority, before the year 2000, only about 1% of kindergartners had non-medical vaccination exemptions. During the 23-24 school year, the exemption rate was 8.8%. That is amazing growth. I recently had a chance to talk with a leading expert about that. Dr. Ben Hoffman is a pediatrician and the director of 2 hospital programs focused on children. He's currently the national president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And why has it been growing?
I think there are a lot of reasons. So first of all, there has always been an undercurrent of vaccine hesitancy in Oregon that's different than in a lot of other places. I practiced in New Mexico for 15 years before I moved to Oregon in 2011. And the concerns about vaccines and some of the beliefs about vaccines are very different in Oregon. I think some of it comes from the history of sort of libertarian ideals. What I've learned to appreciate is the Oregon frontier spirit.
Government, keep your rules off me.
Yeah, and then concerns that arise around the impact of vaccines, specifically beliefs around autism and measles vaccine and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think those 2 factors, the concern about the impact of vaccines and then the desire for personal freedom and not want to, and parental rights, sort of meld here in a unique way that we're seeing now, I think, a little bit more nationally. But has been a consistent issue here in Oregon for decades. I mean, as a pediatrician, we know that vaccines are one of the most effective ways to protect kids and families and communities from diseases that can be really serious, if not deadly.
Okay, Dr. Hoffman, by the way, is with Doren-Becker Hospital and OHSU. We also know that something like 10% of the parents in our community don't buy any of what he just said. This is a rally from 2019 to protest a bill that was making its way through the Oregon legislature that would have stopped parents from opting out of vaccinations for their kids based on personal or religious reasons. Those gathered said they were not necessarily against vaccines, but they did not want the government forcing their kids to get shots. Some of those parents believe they are protecting their children by not getting them vaccinated. So how can doctors get through to them? Dr. Hoffman says it comes down to trust.
When we're talking about vaccines, really what we're dealing with is settled science. And the fact that fear gets interjected through rumors and social media and other issues makes it really complicated then. It can instill fear in families.
And part of that fear seems to be, too, don't believe the doctor. Of course they're going to tell you to do this.
Right, and I think that's why having a trusting, long-term trusting relationship with somebody makes it a little bit. It's harder to. It makes it easier to have trust if you've built trust over time. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the ways in conversations that I have with families, one of the things I assure them is I would never recommend for their child anything that I did not or would not recommend for my own child. And I promise you, all of my children are have been vaccinated in accordance with the best practice recommendations.
I've read that in the past, doctors would talk to people who were sort of hesitant and just say, listen, I'm the authority, I'm the doctor,
yeah.
Trust me and do it.
Yeah.
But does that work?
That doesn't work. And that's never been my style. I was taught very differently. As I said, meeting people and families where they are, and that becomes easier over time as you learn to develop mutual trust.
Okay, so far we've learned that a certain percentage of folks in Oregon and Southwest Washington do not believe that vaccines work or are safe, and another group of folks just don't want the government telling them what to do. I'm sure there are people out there who fall into both categories as well. We've also heard that the way for doctors to break through both of those barriers is basically trust through time, meeting the family where they're at and not trying to use their official title or power. But Dr. Hoffman does concede the system as it is now, with visits become shorter and shorter, needs to make it easier for both sides.
We want a system that puts kids and families and communities in the center and provides for their needs in a way that is authentic and decreases barriers. So that if the biggest barrier to a family getting their child vaccinated are concerns, that we have an opportunity, they can get to see me, that we have time to sit down and have the conversation we need to have, meaning that I'm not being forced to move rooms every 6 minutes. Yeah. That we can have the conversation in their language so that I can utilize adequate interpreter services. And then I have the ability to work with them to actually get that vaccine to their child in the most expedient, simple way. And the system now is set up that there are so many barriers, the payment issues, the access issues, and all of that.
Finally, the reason all of this is so important is because of where it could lead our community. That it could take a frightening wake-up call to convince families to finally get their kids vaccinated.
What scares me, what scares a lot of us, is that it's going to take suffering to get that collective realization back.
I see, because people are, in theory, they're like, well, we haven't had whooping cough before. I'm not sure we want to roll the dice on this vaccine.
Right.
But you're saying that if people start dying, maybe that image is like, okay, I don't want that. So maybe it's worth trusting this doctor.
I mean, if you go back to the 50s around polio, the 40s and 50s with polio, people lined up in the streets because everybody knew somebody who had been severely affected by polio and was in an iron lung or was going to have lifelong disabilities because of that. We absolutely do not want to get back to that.
And so when you see the numbers reaching, I think, 900 already in Oregon and maybe going to create a new record, what do you think of that?
It terrifies me. It terrifies me.
It's not quite 900, but it's getting there. Tomorrow night, we'll talk about one of the nation's most prominent vaccine skeptics, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. President-elect Trump has nominated him to run the Department of Health and Human Services. What could that mean for vaccine skepticism? We'll talk with the Dr. Hoffman about that tomorrow. In the meantime, what are your thoughts on this? Are you a vaccine skeptic? Do you think skeptics are out of their minds? Something in between? I'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Coming up next on The Story, a bit of perspective and a powerful reminder to enjoy the little things as you think about what you're thankful for this holiday season. You may want to grab a tissue or 5 for this next story. It's coming up right after this. Now to a story that's about time, something that unites every single one of us. We only have so much of it. The cliche goes, time is precious. And our John Goodwin met someone who treats time like currency, learning to make the most of what he has.
Because we're just surrounded by noise all the time, right? And when you really escape it and end up in a place like that and really get quiet, it's profound.
For John Waller, movement is life.
Yeah.
Each moment with its own details.
I find myself paying a lot more attention now than I used to. One of my favorite things to do when you're standing behind the falls there is you look up and you pick a single water droplet and you just follow it down.
John has spent many a moment turned memory here at Oregon's Silver Falls State Park.
One of my favorite places. I've been coming up here since I was in college. our cross-country team would come up here and we'd run the 7-mile loop as our practice. It's just so dramatic and beautiful. This is like that iconic postcard shot. Time and water and ice and freezing and thawing just has broken the rock apart here and created this huge inset into this cliff face.
An explorer, a filmmaker, John has an eye for the bigger picture.
This spot right here looks like the eye, like a giant eye.
And perspective on each passing moment.
I'm always looking to buy more time.
What would you do if you only had a year to live? That 8,760 hours is your currency. How are you going to spend it? Time is my most precious resource, and savoring that time has become my new destination.
Hi, John.
Hello?
How's it going?
Doing all right. In October 2020, at the age of 44, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer.
Since then, it's camped out in his liver. With guidance from OHSU oncologist Dr. Emerson Chen, John's treatments range from the traditional to unconventional.
So this is the right side liver?
Yeah, this is the
left
right side, that's the left side. Every mindset is different. There's no right or wrong. John is a very active person and someone who will want to explore all the options, but certainly not at the cost of sacrificing hobbies and people that are important to him.
With over 30 Mount Hood summits and an appetite for adventure, John is above the decline.
What is realistic? I've had to shift my mindset about what I'm physically capable of, and that doesn't define me.
Everything's harder. By 40%.
In 2023, he raised $22,837 with an ascent of Aconcagua, matching the elevation of the highest peak in the Western Hemisphere. The money went to Project Athena, a nonprofit helping survivors of medical and traumatic setbacks achieve their adventurous goals. John climbed with a small pump embedded in his abdomen, delivering chemo to his liver. Somewhat of a high-altitude clinical trial.
And so we had to kind of plan out the days that John's going to be away, and to make sure that that time is would be where the reservoir would not run dry.
My next mountain may be a lot smaller, but the mindset is similar in that I'm still going to try to do what it takes to climb that mountain, whatever it may be. I've had to untangle a lot of things about myself that I thought were my identity.
A body once unstoppable, now confined, but a soul uncaged.
That was true. And that isn't as much now. And so there's an acceptance that comes with that. That's good stuff there. That's good coffee.
A year after John's diagnosis, a gift out of thin air. Two trails intersecting.
That's the light and the dark of all of this.
A saunter on a dating app led him to Liz.
This tree.
Yeah, look at the lighting on this. The outdoors was a real connecting influence for us at the very beginning.
John had listed a bunch of his interests there, and he mentioned owls as one of his favorite things. And so I'm a bird nerd myself, but I was too embarrassed to put it on my dating profile. I was like, okay, tell me about a cool experience that we've had with an owl, thinking he's gonna have some lame thing to say, but
I saw one once.
he had made a video of a great gray owl hunting a vole and sent that to me, which was like, wow, you made this? That's incredible.
I'd been waiting to play that owl card for years. And then Liz came along and I was like, this is the time. I just didn't see it coming. I remember our second date, you know, I was very open, very transparent about my circumstances. And at one point she looked at me and she said, you don't have to protect me. And I was just, okay.
He's just a very authentic person, and that means not just talking about, you know, the good things in life, the cool things, you know, the things that he feels proud of, but his vulnerability and, you know, things that are hard, things that are real.
The life that I imagine without her feels completely empty and dark.
Last March, John proposed beneath the northern lights at the Arctic Circle. In July, they were married.
And he asked me, like, so where do you think we should get married? And I was like, well, you know, I think we should go to Silver Falls. It was the perfect wedding.
Who would want to welcome me and all of my medical baggage into their life?
But I see two great blue herons. It's, for me, really a proclamation to John and to the world that I adore this man. I love him.
Every place that I go, everything that I do, there is that voice in my head that says, this may be the last time that you ever get to see that. You know? So it's like, just savor it.
I'm a fragile human being just like every one of you. A lot can malfunction when you're the most complex thing in the known universe.
In January, John spoke at TEDx Portland's Salon on Mortality. He deflects labels like victim and warrior, seeking something greater.
I really love the word healing when it's applied to what I'm going through as a substitute for a battle. Really nice reflections tonight. Healing can take place regardless of the outcome. I'm not in a battle, I'm not in a fight, I'm here to heal myself. And fresh air, looking up at these trees and hearing a river, hearing the breeze through the leaves, that is healing that can happen just about anywhere at any time. What's next in store for this place? Like, what's the new transformation that we'll see in the next 10,000 years? We won't be around to see it. At the end of the day, in those sort of final moments of life, what really matters is what were the fingerprints that you left behind for the people you love. Not so much how many mountains did you climb.
Have you ever considered lying back with your hands resting behind your head, enjoying the sky and scenery as you drift along, wondering from a place of curiosity where you might end up?
If we're all just droplets tumbling back to Earth,
I don't know how my story plays out. Time will tell.
John is already deeply grounded.
What we do know is that I'm here, right now, talking with you. What a gift this is.
None of us know how much time is left. You don't know if happily ever after is really a thing. Why not make the most of what you have today?
Together we're floating along as the current takes us away. Maybe with our hands stretching behind our back.
The sun feels great.
It does feel good.
Looking with curiosity up at the sky.
John has entered hospice care now, embracing his final chapter with peace. We're back right after this. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. I hope you have a great night. I'll see you back here tomorrow night, 6:30.